in the fuel market to competition to reduce the strategic importance of oil and the ability of oil price spikes to wreak havoc on our economy. There is a bill called the Open Fuel Standard Act, introduced by Congressman Shimkus and Congressman Engel, that are right here to make a few opening comments. And the focus of the bill is ensuring that new cars enable fuel competition of some sort. After the congressmen say their words, we're going to turn to a panel of speakers, and I'll introduce them after the congressman speaks. All right, in the interest of time, let's go to questions. Anybody have any questions?
My name is Jim Tarnacola. I'm a resident of Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm a businessman. I mostly own businesses in food distribution, manufacturing, and retail. So all very sensitive to transportation fuel costs, commodity costs, as well as discretionary spending. So became interested in this 6 months ago. My interest kind of went to advocacy and then paranoia as I basically asked the question is, why is this moving so slow? It seems like the businesses, the acts have been drafted and co-sponsored for over a year. I can't see anything that's happening in Congress that's more urgent or more related to economic growth and jobs. We've been through 21 debates. I haven't heard flex fuel or methanol mentioned once in all of that debate. So what's stopping that?
In 2009, we used about 140 billion gallons of gas. So if you're going to improve automobile efficiency and you're not selling as many automobiles, you've got about 250 million on the road right now, you're not looking at that 140 billion gallons going to 180 billion gallons or 200 billion gallons or whatever. So you've got a lot of strong economic forces that are fighting for a larger piece of a smaller pie in the future. And each one of these forces has its own servants who represent their districts, and they campaign vigorously. It's the American way. It's interest fighting interest. But the trouble is that it's not in the public interest. And so this is an effort to elevate above private interest and get this into the public interest. That's why it's taking so long. And we just got to keep beating this drum. And we've got to drown out the private interests who want to raise the welfare of their oil refinery or their protected program over the common good for the American people.
I was reading a book by a race researcher named Bldg on the impetus behind the Iraq War, and one of the things that he talked about was that around 2001, 2002, one of the concerns was over oil supply shortages or just the lack of buffer between supply and demand, and he argues that that provided some impetus, although not the primary impetus, of course. Where I was wondering if you could address that.
I can take that quickly. You know, if the United States had wanted at the time to increase supply from Iraq, the easiest thing to have done would have been to remove the sanctions. So I really don't think, and I doubt Jim or Wes thinks that that really was a driver in the short term, but you need to kind of step back and ask, why are we involved in the Persian Gulf? Why are we so concerned about the Persian Gulf to begin with, not why a particular war was started. And then you understand that it's a strategic reason. You know, going back to President Carter and the Carter Doctrine, it's a strategic reason because oil is a strategic commodity. And oil is a strategic commodity because it has a virtual monopoly over transportation fuel.
I hear a lot of discussion about how the Keystone Pipeline or drilling more, opening up our strategic reserves, that will bring down the cost of gasoline for Americans. Is that accurate?
Marginal. But you need to understand, okay, look, if Keystone Pipeline, if it's completed, and I support it, by the way, would add about 750,000 barrels of oil a day to the world market. There's, I think, 89 million barrels a day being used, so this is order of 1% increase. But world oil demand is going up, well, with China and India industrializing, at rates of 3%. So this is a one-time addition of 1%, okay, and let's say this takes 3 years before it gets going, okay. In that amount of time, world demand will go up 9%, and then another 3%, and then another 3%. So, fine, do Keystone. Certainly it's not helpful to block it, but it's not the answer. It's a very limited play, and it's like this, I don't know, it was Wes or someone mentioned, you know, here we are having this huge argument over the Social Security withholding when the country is being taxed order of magnitude more for oil revenues, okay, and it's not going into your Social Security fund either, okay, it's going into someone else's fund who wants to kill you. So we need to flood the world with liquid fuel. And by all means, to the extent we can expand oil production, that helps, but it's not enough. We have huge amounts of natural gas in this country. In fact, the price has crashed because there isn't enough market for it being used for what it is used for, which is mostly power generation. Okay, but we can convert it into methanol, okay, and make, you know, $1.30 or $1.13 fuel and flood the world. We can make methanol also out of biomass, out of crop residue biomass, because it doesn't have to be sugars and starches. We can make a hell of a lot more ethanol if the market was open to it. Okay, here the Bldg have fought for years just to get them to accept E15 instead of E10. Why did they have to do that? Because they had more ethanol than they could sell. They were being blocked out of the market by virtue of the fact that the standard for regular gas was E10, and there were hardly any flex fuel cars around that could use E85. Okay, you know, right now, see, look, you could buy a tanker of methanol for $1.13 a gallon, but you can't sell it to the cars because they're being rigged to only eat gasoline. Okay, so what we have is we're being locked out of the market with the fuel that we can produce from our own resources. Okay, we're being prevented from making full use of our own resources. And this is also true in Europe. Okay, and there's also, you know, natural gas, biomass, coal can all be turned into either ethanol or methanol. Okay, so to be prevented from using these resources is like someone passing a law saying you can only eat herring. Okay, and we will charge you for herring what we choose. It'll be $100 a pound. Sorry, that's what you have to eat. You're much better off if you're able to eat all kinds of food, and if someone wants to charge you $100 for herring, you can say no. Okay? And so that's the situation.
Let me add just one or 2 points. I very much agree with Bob. There are 2 mantras that suffuse the public debate. One liberal, one conservative. Both are nutty. Okay? The conservative mantra is drill, baby, drill. And what they mean usually is for oil. You will not be able to break OPEC by outproducing them with oil, because we have about 2% of the world's reserves and they have 80%. And it costs us tens of dollars a barrel to lift oil, and it costs them under $5 a barrel. And as Bob so clearly pointed out in his charts, they have 80% of the world's oil. They're pumping annually 36% of it. That is called a conspiracy and restraint of trade. Okay. So there is no reasonable way we pump more, add another percent or 2, let's say, to the world's supply. What happens? It improves our balance of payments. We'll say that. It improves our balance of payments. Basically, that's it. It doesn't block OPEC. There's one worldwide oil market to a first approximation, some difference in sulfur content depending on the refinery and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, there's one worldwide market. So over a reasonably short period of time, if we say, hooray for Canada, we're going to buy Canada's oil, we buy more from Canada and less from Saudi Arabia. Somebody else buys more from Canada and more from Saudi Arabia and less from Canada. So drill, baby, drill. If you're talking about oil, does not do the job. It improves your balance of payments, and that is basically it. The liberal counterpart is renewable whatever. And if you're talking about renewable fuels from vegetation, fine. But if you are talking about affecting the transportation market, the oil market, you cannot do it by building windmills and solar plants or geothermal plants or anything like that. Because in the early 70s, nearly 20% of our electricity came from oil. Today, less than 1% does, and most of it is in Hawaii. So in 1973, you said, damn those folks in the Middle East cutting off our oil. Here's what we'll do. We'll build nuclear power plants, or we'll build wind farms. You could well have been doing something to reduce our dependence on oil, because 20% of our electricity was coming from oil. Today, with effectively none of it coming from oil, you can build nuclear power plants or wind farms or solar collectors till the cows come home, and it won't have a damn thing to do with the price of oil. Now, some way down the road, lots of electric cars, going to need maybe some more generating capacity, but three major studies by Pacific Northwest National Laboratories, by EPRI, the industry, and by NRDC, Environmental Group, all say the same thing. You can have well over 50% of the cars on the road be electric before you need a single new power plant, because you can charge at night. All you have to do is construct the incentives for off-peak charging. So, President Obama's speech here a few days ago is suffused with the idea that we can do something about the price at the gasoline pump by solar and wind and so forth. If there were some way we could get the conservatives to say, okay, we understand it, just balance of payments, drill baby drill is not really an answer. And the liberals to say, okay, we understand we don't make electricity out of oil anymore, so by building good, clean, otherwise attractive ways to produce electricity, we're not doing anything about oil. Then the debate could at least get started on some of the issues. As it is, both liberals and conservatives are letting us down. They're not talking straight about what is at issue and what is occurring.